Okay, so hopefully you can see that. Right, so where are we? Let's have a look and see where we are. So we've done quite a bit of this already. So we've looked at some of the first steps. We've looked at some of the kind of foodie bits of this. We've looked at doing things like cravings, those kinds of stuff. We're going to have a look at some practical things to do, and I've already sent you menus and recipes and stuff like that. What to eat and when, we've done quite a bit on that. So that's the blood sugar one that I sent you, and I've sent you the lifestyle food pyramid. This is kind of where we are here, a mixture of this today and the healing activator. So this is what we're going to concentrate on today. So this is where we are. And the first thing we're going to talk about is learned reactions within this part of the program. So what do I mean by that? Well, we're going to actually look today not at food, but we're going to look at the kind of mindset and kind of existential bit of this. We're going to look at, you know, what addiction is about in just a very small way, because you know more about it than I do, let's face it. But I want to put a little bit of maybe a different perspective on this for you, and to help you to just get a bit of an understanding, look at it slightly in a different way, and maybe we'll just see. So what do I mean by this? Well, the perspective from outside, I know, is that from a legal position, from a social, the way that society looks at addicts, you know, from a moral position, the medical approaches to addicts and to the treatment of addicts are based on very specific attitudes, aren't they? In other words, that it's bad. Particularly if it's around drugs, not so much around alcohol, but you know, if you are addicted to an illegal substance because they've made it illegal, rightly or wrongly, then you know it's kind of, you're vilified, aren't you? And you know, this is the whole problem with the whole system. And I know I went to San Francisco many years ago, and the San Francisco is absolutely full on the streets of addicts, and they are, you know, they're giving them room, but they're not actually giving them the opportunity to be helped. And this has certainly got worse, much worse during the pandemic. But actually, you know, the whole compass of this really is what needs to change, is because, you know, I don't believe that any addict signs up to be an addict. I don't believe that anybody says, yeah, that's me, I'm signing up for this, this is really what I want to do, and this is how I want to live my life. Because really addiction, I believe, and many of the experts believe, is really about looking for something, whether it's a substance or a habit, that make us feel better in this world. So whether that addiction is to cocaine, alcohol, fags, caffeine, sugar, sex, shopping, gambling, it's something that actually is there that we use, and we all do it to a lesser or greater degree, to make us feel better. And the reason for that is that, you know, there's a guy called Tony Robbins, you might want to Google him, he's a bit of a guru within the sort of self-improvement world, is that he talks about the 6 basic human needs. And it also, addiction also represents the highest aspirations of everybody as well, because as humans, we're all really the same, and we all want the same, we all require the same in order for us to thrive, in order for us to live a successful life. We all need these things. Number one is that we need certainty in our life. We need, you know, certain parts of every day and every week and every year and all of aspects of our life to have a certainty about it. What do I mean by that? Well, it means that there's predictability about it. So in order for us to feel safe and us to feel that things are okay, we need some assurances. In other words, we want to be able to avoid pain in our life. We want to be able to avoid the pain of loss and of grief and of financial difficulty and of homelessness and of being unloved and unworthy and all those sorts of things. Because what we really want to be looking for, and quite rightfully so, is we want the certainty that we can have a nice day, you know, and have a nice year and have a nice life. We all want that. But at the same time, we'll also thrive on variety, or in other words, uncertainty. So although it's great to have certainty, it's a bit like Groundhog Day. I don't know if you've ever seen that film. If you had Groundhog Day every day, that would all drive us bonkers. And in fact, you know, one of the big problems with the mental health problems that we have during the last year is that, you know, we're all locked in our homes, particularly during the actual lockdowns. And people are experiencing this monotonousness, this every day is the same. And, you know, I'm very aware that particularly for those recovering from addictions, is that it's easy to fall into that groundhog type day, because the opportunities that you may have are less than perhaps those that are not in your position, if that makes sense. So that variety, we need to have surprises, we need to have change, we need to have new things, new opportunities, new stimuli. We need all of that. So that's number 2. Number 3 is significance. So there is nothing better, is there? And this is why, you know, we like compliments, is because we want to feel that we're important in somebody else's life. We need to feel that we are needed, in other words. And, you know, there's an unreal situation for everybody at the moment, but also compounded for people perhaps that are living with abusers, whether that's men or women, or people that are indeed recovering addicts, because this is almost like it's ramped everything up, because the isolation that we're all feeling, and feeling that we're not able to connect with people and that we're significant and important in somebody else's life, is perhaps heightened. And the only way that, you know, people are doing this outside, and we're doing this on here today, is connecting through Zoom and through you know, other forms of social media, is gaining our significance, but it's almost in a kind of one step removed way, because we want important people in our lives, but we also want to feel important ourselves. And, you know, I hope that part of my role here is to know that I think you're important, and that you are special, and that you are individuals, and that you all are unique. And I really mean that. And it doesn't matter what your history is. It doesn't matter what your addictions have been. There is no judgment. You know, the people that judge do that from a place of ego. And so when you reduce your ego, what happens is you also reduce your judgment. And it's personally a journey that I have been on for some time now, is that as I've understood that I'm just like you, I'm, you know, no different to you, and therefore I'm not egotistical about what I know and my life and how it is, then that allows me to be in a place where I literally do not have any judgment. I can educate, and I can inform, and I can have opinions. But it doesn't mean that if you have a different opinion to me, or an education level, or where you are in society, then I'm not going to be judgmental of that. And very closely linked to that is the feeling that we need a strong, close relationship with something or someone. And I know that a lot of, you know, if you think about the elderly people in our population that have been literally tied into their homes for the last year, being made to feel frightened that they cannot go out of their front door, old people in homes that are not allowed to mingle like you are, that are being, you know, isolated away from their family and friends. Maybe just a carer goes in and delivers them some food. You know, this is actually the true sadness of loneliness, and of not having the connection on a regular basis that is absolutely essential to all of us. And so love and connection is often one of the things that goes as your life changes, or as people's lives change through their addictions, because actually their addiction takes over the connections that they have with significant people in their lives. Or indeed, you know, we need to talk about pets here as well, because I think a lot of people have been saved. There's a little old lady that lives just around the corner from me, and she's got a little dog, and she sits in her window every day with her dog on her knee, and I wave to her, you know, when I go past, and at least she has her animals, and I see lots of people walking around here with their dogs. So there has to be, for us to be the people and to feel human, there has to be a way for us to find love and connection. And if it's not from family, then it needs to be from friends, or it can be, as I say, from a pet maybe. And the fifth thing is interesting, because, you know, if you're in the depths of an addiction, the last thing you're thinking about is where you're going, other than perhaps where the next drink or the next fag or the next fix is coming from. And so it doesn't allow you to be able to think about the fifth thing, which is growth. So this is kind of looking forward to where is this taking me now? Where is my life going to go, other than just for the next surviving for the next 5 minutes or 5 hours? And so as you come out of the addiction, as you begin to recover, one of the things that I would encourage you to do is to think about, well, and visualize, what is my life going to be like from now, in order for you to have a fulfilling life as a human. Then actually having some goals in place and having some, at least, thoughts. And it doesn't have to be massive. You don't need to be, you know, a millionaire. You don't need to want to do massive things, but there are small things that you can concentrate on that will give you that impetus, perhaps, to change and to manage your addiction, so that you keep strong. And number 6, it could be in terms of, you know, that growth doesn't necessarily need to be in terms of education or financially, or in terms of relationships even. But I think one of the largest ways in which you can find that fulfillment, and a lot of those other fulfillments as well, actually, is contribution. So instead of focusing on yourself, and we all do that because we're all selfish beings, is actually how can you focus on helping and giving to and giving back and supporting others? Because if you do that, if you find a way to do that, then you are, by definition, going to be in a period of expansion and growth. By definition, you're going to create those connections. By definition, you're going to feel more important and special in other people's lives, even if it's in a tiny way. And also, you're going to create this certainty and variety in your life too. Is being, if you take the focus off you and put it on somebody or something else, how can you help? How can you give back? Then all of those other 5 human needs will come into play. So the thing about the addiction, whatever it might be, and particularly if we're talking about addiction like drugs or alcohol, is that, you know, effectively this addiction will ultimately deplete and destroy a person if it goes unchecked. And I'm sure that you know people who it has destroyed. And so the quest of the addict is understandable. I understand. We all understand that if you have an addiction, the quest that you're on every day, or that you were on every day, to feel better. Do you remember the whole idea of this is, I just want the pain to go away. I want to feel better. I want to feel human. It's understandable. I hope you understand now that everybody wants to feel like that every day. We don't want to feel like rubbish. Your quest for your, you know, your sucker, your blanket of whatever it is that you have used is understandable. But, you know, one of the things that I have begun to do a lot of is listening to experts. And there's a doctor, a physician in Canada called Dr. Gabor Mate. You're going to get this recording, so you'll be able to see who I'm talking about. And he has endless amounts of information on YouTube, and he's written books such as In the Realm of the Hungry Ghost. He's an addiction specialist. And this is one of his quotes: "The ultimate purpose of the addiction is to make us human." He's identified that. And that's through years and years and years of work with addicts on the street. And he's also himself actually, he was a shopping addict. He used to go and buy himself classical music when he was feeling stressed and upset. And, you know, that's no different. And it sounds like, oh, you know, but that's easy to get over. But actually the depths of that addiction for him meant that things that he should have been doing, he wasn't present for. So he describes how one day he had a patient waiting for him, but his addiction was so strong that he had to go to the record store to go and buy the latest CDs, you know, whatever it was he wanted. So we know we mustn't underplay it. So why we self-medicate? These are some of the reasons that we all do the same thing, you know, in whatever sense. We do it for pain relief. So whether that's emotional or physical pain, some of that pain relief is given to us by the very people that should be looking after us. In other words, the physicians and the pharmaceutical companies. You know, it's doled out to us, or we can go and buy it over the counter. For our emotional pain, you know, we want to be able to get rid of that. So physical pain and emotional pain. If you do exercises, if you take brain scans, then the physical pain signs in the brain are exactly the same as the signs that are highlighted when somebody is emotionally in an emotionally painful state. So although they're very two different things, the actual result of it is the same. So all of us do that. If we're upset or if we're physically hurt, then we will want to self-medicate. There are other conditions such as post-traumatic stress disorder. You know, this is very, very common, and I believe that this is probably going to be on the rise after, you know, the year that everybody's had, to a lesser or greater degree. And certainly those soldiers coming out of Afghanistan, when they were in a situation where they'd seen or witnessed or been part of something very traumatic, in order for them to get over this, they were given low-dose opiates because they medicate against the trauma. But of course, you know, not all of them, but there is quite a high percentage of soldiers or you know, forces that are now addicted to opiates because they know, or they've relied on this self-medication in order to cope with their PTSD symptoms. Depression, very, very common. We've already talked about the fact that, you know, the mental health problems have gone up during the last year, and actually there are more calls to 111 on mental health issues than any calls on the crisis, on people asking for help regarding COVID. Prozac obviously is one of the drugs of choice that you might take if you are feeling depressed, and the reason that's given is it increases something called serotonin in the body, but of course cocaine also increases serotonin. So that's another form of self-medication. If you are feeling depressed, then, you know, if you've ever been depressed and you've ever used cocaine, you know that it works because it increases serotonin. People self-medicate because of anxiety and social anxiety. So this is classic, isn't it? The social anxiety. I don't know if you watch a program called The Big Bang Theory, and Raj, you know, his social anxiety, he cannot speak to women, you know, for the first however many 4 years it was, until he had some alcohol. You know, it makes us all feel more confident, doesn't it? And you know, it's just something that we use, but also anxiety can be helped with marijuana as well, of course. Dr. Gabor Mate is also a sufferer with ADHD, and in fact was given Ritalin, which is a stimulant which you will be familiar with. And we've already talked about the fact that there is a high number of people with ADHD that are prone to becoming addicted to substances, such as cocaine, crack cocaine, caffeine, nicotine. And this is because all of these elevate dopamine levels, which is what Ritalin does, and therefore is the kind of self-medication or medication for people with ADHD. And finally on this list, bipolar, which is those extremes of emotions where, you know, people are either extremely hyper or very, very low. And, you know, there's self-medication going on for that, particularly within the communities and people that haven't been properly diagnosed with things like marijuana and opiates. You know, it's not uncommon for people who are, well, for anybody, but for recovering addicts, particularly in the early days, and I don't know whether you're experiencing these things even now, is for you to have these common emotions, such as, you know, getting angry, being frustrated, feeling irritable, depression and anxiety, and also suffering with panic attacks too. There's a huge amount of people that are experiencing perhaps some of these things for the very first time, and it'll be interesting to see. I know for a fact that a lot of my friends, and me included, you know, I've drunk more alcohol in the last year than I've drunk for a very long time, and this is a way of self-medicating. You know, I maybe only have a glass every other day, so it's, you know, I'm not an alcoholic, but we do know that the anxiety and the depression around this situation is affecting everybody, and so we get it. You know, we get how you feel, and so it's very obvious that these negative emotions are the ones that you want to avoid. You know, you don't want to feel pain. These trigger your brain, and it triggers your brain, the addict's brain, to crave your drug of choice or your sugar or whatever it is, perhaps quicker or more instantly, because you've experienced the relief that your drug of choice gave you in order for you to feel human and to feel better. So recognizing that these uncomfortable feelings are there is the start. It's an awareness. Unless you have an awareness of why you feel the way that you do, how on earth are you ever going to be able to cope and manage to come out of that reaction once you are triggered? Whether it's, you know, somebody that you're living with, whether it's you've gone to the shop and something has ticked you off, or you've been watching something on the news that's made you angry, or you're feeling anxious because you don't know perhaps where you've got enough money, or whatever it is. These are very, very common, but we're very aware that these triggers are bigger for you, and that your solution is very different to the ones that perhaps people who aren't addicted in such ways are. So, in other words, you know, we know that your addiction, our addiction, is not a conscious choice. Nobody chooses it. And there's another assumption, because that's what people assume. Oh, you know, it's almost like, well, we're going to vilify them because obviously they've decided to, you know, live in a squat and shoot heroin, as if it's something that they've chosen to do. We know that that is not the case. And we also know that although there is a genetic element, and that there is a kind of effect from the brain, perhaps in that you have a propensity for addiction, actually that's a bit of a misnomer as well. There is a tiny element of it, but actually the only thing that's diseased is the brain, because you are addicted, because we know that the addiction does actually affect the way that the brain works. So in other words, what we're saying is it's really more to do here with societal experiences, with your past home life, with a lack or an unawareness or some hole in your basic human needs, and potentially, and more often, with adverse childhood experiences. In other words, there is something that you have suffered, that you have experienced, that has led you down the path of addiction. Gabor Mate is extremely hot on this, because in his view, the question is not why the addiction, but why the pain, because the addiction is only there to cover up whatever pain it is that you have suffered. And he says of all the people that are on the streets that he has treated in 30 years in Toronto, in Canada, I think, all of them will have experienced some or all of these traumas in their life, to a lesser or a greater effect. So I just want you to describe to you what I mean by how this experience of life can lead into perhaps the way that you are living your life, and how we all actually get to be who we are. So, for example, this is all about experiences. So we have good experiences and bad experiences as children. Let's start with children, for example. So we can have a very loving home life. We can have a traumatic home life. The thing about our childhood is that we don't know any different. You know, I've got friends who were extremely traumatized as children. You know, abusive and aggressive alcoholic fathers and mothers who were very aggressive with them and emotionally and physically abused them on a regular basis. But they didn't know. They didn't know that this wasn't normal. It took them a while to work it out. And looking back, you know, they go, oh, actually, we just thought everybody was kind of living that kind of life. And we knew that ours was probably a bit extreme eventually. But we didn't know that this wasn't unusual. But then you go to the other end where, you know, most people that experience what they conceive to be a happy childhood, if you actually look back, maybe there were things going on that were hidden, or things that were quite subtle. So it could be that actually you did have an overbearing father, for example, who was domineering a mother and suppressing a mother, and it wasn't obvious to you, but that atmosphere in the house was enough for you to have experienced something which actually isn't entirely favourable. And it's not even as if we're kind of judging all of this, because an experience, a bad experience for a child, can be as much as sitting in your pushchair at 18 months old, being handed a nice big whippy ice cream and dropping it on the floor. You know, that is very traumatic for a child, because that child doesn't have the foresight, doesn't have the experience to know that actually daddy can just go and buy me another ice cream. In that child's mind, the life has ended. You know, I just got this ice cream and I've dropped on the floor. You know, this is horrendous to me, which is why, you know, children cry when their parents go out of the room. And there's a lot of studies being done through children who live in homes, you know, and how their withdrawal of love and connection has a massive effect on how they live their lives. But whatever experience it is, it means that that experience, or that repeated experience, creates an emotion or a mood. And if that emotion or mood goes on for a long time, so say there's just an incident, or the odd incident of something that happened to you as a child or a teenager or as a young adult or whatever it is, and it happens just occasionally, well, generally, you know, the emotion and the mood is fleeting and it comes and goes. But if it's a mood that actually lowers your vibration or keeps you down, that creates a temperament. So it's a kind of norm. That temperament becomes normal for you. And it may be, you know, I'm a pessimist. Let's use that one. You labeling yourself, you know, this is an experience I've had. It's created this ongoing emotion and mood in me. And so you believe that this temperament of yours is true, that you are a pessimist, for example. And that becomes ultimately your personality. You know, Sarah's known as a pessimist. Marion's known as an optimist. So-and-so is known as, you know, a fun-loving person. So-and-so is always grumpy. And that personality that you then create, because that personality has been created over time by all these experiences that you've had, that personality then becomes your personal reality. And so this is how we develop ourselves, this is how we develop our life. and how we become. And you can be on one path and be knocked off it by something that's happened to you. So you could have had the happiest of childhoods in your view, but something will come along that will knock you off, and all of a sudden that changes an emotion for you. That could be, you know, the loss of a dog, or, you know, your girlfriend's fallen out with you, or whatever it might be. It changes, and all of a sudden, if you don't have a way to come out of that emotion carries on and becomes your temperament, becomes your personality, and becomes your personal reality. So this is a good example of this. This is John. He's known as Angry John. So Angry John works in a company. I'm just having. Angry John works in a company, and it's a Monday morning, and he's got a meeting to go to. His bosses have said, you need to be here on time. All your staff need to hear from you afterwards. Make sure you're here. And he arrives at work on a Monday morning, a bit busy, gets into the car park, and his fancy allocated space with his name on has been taken up by somebody else. And of course, he's furious with this. So he drives around the car park to find a new space. And not very far away, there's a new space with somebody coming out of it. So as he sits here and waits for the car to come out, the car reverses out, and a guy pulls in and goes into his car parking space. I certainly had that happen to me in supermarket car parks, and I know how annoying that can be. So John is now even angrier. He's furious now because he's lost that parking space, and he's got to drive around and find somewhere else. So he drives around this massive car park, and he has to go to the overflow car park, which is miles away, park his car. He gets out, he's all hot and flustered. You know, he has to go into the building with his keys and everything all around, you know, dropping stuff, and yeah, in a right old mood. Past the receptionist, goes into the meeting, sits down at the meeting, and of course the meeting doesn't really go that well for John. He comes out and has a cup of coffee, speaks to, you know, his staff, and relates to them. You never guess what happened to me this morning. And he relates this whole story, and he's still really angry about this incident that's happened to him. He goes out for lunch with one of his colleagues, and he goes and rants on about this incident. He goes home to his wife and is still ranting on about this incident and how it's affected his day. And he can't believe that somebody would do that, and how dare they park in his parking space, and you know, on and on and on. He goes out for a drink with his mates in the evening, and he's still ranting on about it. So what John is doing is he's had an experience, it's created an emotion and a mood, and it's affected his whole day. His temperament that whole day has been changed. It's massively affected his personality, and therefore his personality is, I'm just angry. And he's known as Angry John. And all of that day, he has been living in the past. From the moment that incident happened, he was living in the past. And this is the skill of all of us, and this is what the challenge is for all of us, is that everything that we think or feel or do or aspire to is based on what we know from past experiences, if that makes sense. So the skill of this is to change the dynamic, and instead of living in the past, is live for now, so that we can live in the future. Because if we always base our future on what we know to be in the past, we will always get the same things. I think there's an expression, isn't there? It's by one of those philosophers. You know, if you keep doing the same things, why would you expect to get different results? So, in other words, we all have the ability to use our experiences to recognize our emotions and our moods, to understand how that has had an impact on our temperament, to realize that this has how we have developed our personality, and therefore our personal reality, in other words, where we are at this moment in time. And once we can recognize all of that, then guess what? We've got the opportunity to change that and to reframe it and decide to do something different. I hope that makes sense. Because really, we just want to be like John. We want to be happy, John, really. Nobody wants to be angry. Nobody wants to be addicted. Nobody wants to be sad. Nobody wants to be broke. You know, nobody wants to be alone. Nobody wants to feel unloved. Nobody wants to feel that we have no self-worth. Nobody wants that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a bit of an exercise. This is from, I wrote a book in 2016, and this is one of the things that features in that book, and that I've done with a lot of people that I've taken away on retreats and so and so. So we're going to have a bit of a break, and we're going to do this exercise because one of the things that is really important to do is, in order for you to change your personal reality, is to not think about you, but we're going to think about other people in the same way that we think about other people with feeling that we're contributing. I want you to be able to think of these 4 questions. So probably what I'll do is I'm going to ask you these questions, and then I'm going to give you some time, some quiet time to answer these. So on your piece of paper, the first question is, who do you admire in your family and why? It can be one, excuse me, it can be one person, it can be one person, it can be more than one person. But for now, you know, you can go back and fill out more, but for now, who do you admire most in your family? Let's put it that way. And why do you admire them? The second question, I'm going to run through the questions. I'm going to go through them each one, because what I've done here is I've kind of given you some clues or some prompts so that you might have completely different reasons why you might admire somebody in your family. The second question is, who do you admire in your circle of friends and why? Who do you admire from history or in the media, or, you know, I don't know, from pop stars or whatever? So thinking about all of those 3 questions, you probably can come up with a name, but maybe the difficult bit is, why do I admire them? So there's just a few clues. You don't have to use them. You can use your own. Apologies for that. So what you need to know, let's just go back here. The most important thing that we're going to talk about today is that the only way for you to recognize those good attributes in other people is because you have those attributes within you. And although you might be feeling lost and disconnected, and that you can't be bothered, or that your focus is on yourself rather than other people, or that this has not been your reality, your personal reality, since you've been within your addiction, is that those are the things that have been featured in your past. You had a past before addiction, and you also have a past post recovery as well. And so what I want to be able to say to you is that you have choice now. That just because your life has been centered around your addiction, and to a lesser or greater degree, depending on where you are in your addiction journey. So for some of you, actually, addictions well behind you, you're ready to move on, you have your eye on the future, this is easier for you because actually you can see with much more of a kind of rosy eyes, if you like. You've got more experience of looking positively into the future. You have a plan. You know, this is what I want to do next. For others, it may be that actually you're still caught in the cycle of addiction. And, you know, we've already heard here that it's very difficult for you to identify with some of the questions that I've asked you, because your life has been so focused around that getting up in the morning, the experience getting up in the morning of I need my fix. It's creating this emotion or a mood in you. The temperament is I need my fix. I'm just thinking about money. I just need to find somebody that can do it for me. Your personality and your personal reality has been completely dominated by the experience of not having your chosen drug, you know, your drug of choice, whatever it might be. So as you come out of this, you can either live in that past experience or try to create a new experience. Because if you keep doing what you're doing, you'll get the same results. And so it's about changing slightly your mindset. So for example, you know, if you see success, if what you see somebody that you admire is about success and about somebody that's done well, somebody that has a good reputation, somebody that has is reliable, you know, somebody that's always helpful, those elements are in you. You might feel that they are lost, but I can guarantee you, if you have identified them, and you just have, that those things are not lost forever from you. You have the ability to tap into those things. In order for you to gain new friendships, you have to be able to give back what you're expecting. So whether that's the whole of the list that I put up here, or whether you've picked out ones that are the most important to you. So for example, to be the best friend for one of you, it's to make sure that you're always being honest, that you're caring, that you're being generous, that you've got a sense of humor, you keep a sense of humor about yourself, and that you don't take yourself too seriously. Because if you live that personal reality by creating that emotion and mood every day, by making that your temperament, because you can, there are ways for you to do that, by moving and shifting into this way of being. In other words, this is your kind of revised personality, and therefore you are going to attract the person or the people that are honest, caring, generous, have a sense of humor, and are self-deprecating. Does that make sense? And it's wonderful that, you know, you've got people that you admire, but it's also not a surprise that your eye is not on those external people. I'm not surprised by that. But that depends on where you are in your journey. And so it's all about scale, isn't it? It's all about, when I'm starting from this point here, how am I going to get to the next stage? So that actually maybe I could think about changing the way that I view the world. And maybe, you know, the number 6 in that is about doing things for other people. Because I can guarantee you that if you do, in the smallest of ways, start thinking about doing something for somebody else, that's going to be the turning point at which you can say, well, maybe there is hope for me. Maybe there is hope that I can be that person that my family will admire, like I admire them. Because that's what we all need. We all need to feel significance. That's the significance part of this. Let me just go back to these. Do you remember these? So we need that significance. The reason that you are projecting onto those people that you admire is because they are significant in your life, and therefore you will have the ultimate desire, even though you might be saying no at the moment, to feel significant. You want the love and connection with somebody else, and you all have that. You all at least have one person that you have that love and connection with. Some of the other things we need to work on in order to increase those elements. And I believe that contribution is potentially one of the biggest ways in which we can do that. So let's move on and just look at some of the things that potentially you could do. So here are some top tips for me. I'm going to send you this. So there are a few of these. I've actually written 50 top tips. I don't want to overwhelm you, but there are some things here that are suggestions specifically for you. And they're based on these 4 principles: self-care, self-growth. Oh, that's wrong. I need to change that. Let's go through them. Self-care, self-improvement and self-awareness. Yeah, so that needs to be self-improvement and self-awareness. So let's look at self-care. So we've already talked a lot about eating and how improving your diet will help all of those aspects. So it's going to help your mood, basically. So if we're talking about living in the past, doing the same things that are going to create the same results, if you continue to eat crap, you are going to continue to feel like shit. If you continue to eat takeaway foods that have absolutely no nutrition in them, you are going to continue to feel like rubbish, potentially, you know, not lose weight, potentially not be able to create a healthy body and put on, you know, muscle mass or whatever it is that makes you healthy. There's no question about this. This isn't an option. That's just complete fact. But we also know that there are other things that are going to help you within this self-care routine, that are going to motivate you to take more care of yourself, doing more exercise. And we've had examples of that. Just getting out into the open air for 20 minutes a day can boost your well-being. The better, or the more things you can do to boost how you feel, the more control you will have over your food. I hope that makes sense to you. Because when you're feeling like rubbish, it's too easy just to grab for the nearest thing and spend 10 minutes in the kitchen, you know, warming up a ready meal or getting a takeaway. You know, I know that. So what is it that you can do that is in a daily routine, that is something that is an experience that will improve your mood, that will change your temperament, that therefore ultimately will make you into the personalities that you admire, like your brothers, all of you, or your uncle? You admire those people. How can you get closer to what you see as somebody that you admire? Because you are close, you're just not seeing it. And therefore your personal reality changes. So you can go from being the pessimist to the optimist. You can go from being the person who has nothing to the person that feels successful. You can go to the person that doesn't have a friend to the person who has friends, and then they're friends that you want to keep. You can go from the person that doesn't have a job to the person that does have a meaningful job, a person that doesn't contribute to society, that actually is giving back in some ways. You know, from just from a complete food point of view, then, you know, your brain is craving fatty acids. It's craving you to eat more oily fish. So it's not fish and chips from the chip shop. This is about eating things like canned tuna and herring and sardines and things like that. It's also about drinking enough water in the daytime. Your body is 72% water. We've got this on the lifestyle food pyramid. Mild hydration. If you might have heard me say this already, if you are thirsty, you are already dehydrated. By the time your body gets to tell you, oh, I'm really thirsty, I could do with a drink, it's already in dehydration mode. So being able to drink throughout the day, and it's water, not cups of coffee and tea. I mean, yes, you can have those as well, but you need to have, you know, 4 big pints of water a day for you to feel hydrated. This improves your brain function, and therefore, if you have any kind of mood disturbances, of depression, of anxiety, simplest thing in the world is just to drink more water in a day. Self-growth, let's have a look at this. So this is a quote by Henry Ford. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So if you think, I'm never going to have any friends, I'm never going to have a job. I'm never going to be respected by my parents, by my family. I'm never going to have the money that I want. I'm never going to break free of this addiction, whatever it might be. Whatever you think is whatever you're going to get. So you need to be able to change the way you think in order to be able to change the outcome. And this, you know, it's called all sorts of things apart from anything else. It's called the law of attraction. And the law of attraction doesn't understand don't or not. So we're going to go through how that works. I'll explain to you how to use that. But one of the most important things, and I think this is a massive part of my life, is what are you feeding into your brain? What are you listening to? What are you watching on the telly or on Netflix? What are you reading, if anything? Are you listening to motivational YouTube stuff? What are you watching on YouTube? What are you doing? Are there any podcasts? Podcasts, you can get a podcast on your phone, you can get it through your computer, SoundCloud, you can listen to the radio, whatever it is. If you're listening to crap, it will make you feel like crap. So how can you twist it? How can you, at least for an hour a day, so I'm going to listen to that podcast. I'm going to listen to Gabor Mate, for example. I'm going to listen to Tony Robbins. I'm going to play some motivational music. The very first session that we did, I played you a motivational 12-minute, you can do this type thing. You can either look at that as crap, or you can say, no, if I could have that in my life, if I could start my day like that, and I do that every day, and I make that into my new habit, that's going to make you and help you to change your experience, an experience that will change your mood, that will change your temperament. Remember Angry John? Angry John started off angry that day. The next day, essentially, Angry John went into the car park, got his parking space, and everything was hunky-dory that day. You have the same opportunity every day to start your day in the same way. How do I know? Because I do it too. You know, there are some days I wake up feeling like rubbish. And I can either sit and wallow in that, because actually, to be honest with you, I'm naturally a bit of a depressive soul. But it doesn't serve me, it doesn't serve the people around me. So what do? I'll go out for a walk, take the dog out, put some Lionel Richie on. Sad, I know. Yeah, whatever. So something, music is really important, obviously. This is a real tip that I've been working with for the last couple of months. I've been a friend of mine. I mean, I've got mentors as well. I've got people that I do courses with too. And she told me about this 6 months ago and I didn't do it. But actually it works really well, is you have an hour by hour list. Because I know that if you're in this Groundhog Day, it's very easy just to every day to be the same. So an hour by hour list, I might say, well, I'm going to do this, and I do it for an hour. And then after an hour, I'm going to change that activity. So rather than do something for 3 hours, I'm going to move. Even if I do something for an hour, something for an hour, something for an hour, and I come back to the first thing, or I do something for an hour and I have a 10-minute break and then I do another hour. It's having hour chunks. You can set it on your alarm, you can set it on your phone. Every hour, get out, get up and get out. Do something, go and make yourself a cup of tea, whatever it is. Having structure to the day, meaning and purpose and personal growth. Having something that you can control. We all want to feel that we are in control. When we have our control taken away from us, either by somebody else or something else, like our cravings or our addiction, means that it's creating that uncertainty. And having an imbalance of certainty and uncertainty is harmful. Most of the time, certainty is what we're looking for. Variety needs to be in there, but actually certainty is really the most important thing. And what would be really interesting, you've given me some wonderful feedback in terms of, who you admire. Just, this is about opening your brain up. This isn't about me changing you. It's about giving you the opportunity to look at things in a different way. You can either choose to do it or not. This is up to you, and it depends where you are. This might not even be right for you right now, but in 6 months' time, as your recovery improves, you might come back to this and actually be more hopeful and be in a situation where you could say, well, actually, do you know what? I can answer those questions now. I couldn't then because I was in the depths You know, I was just dealing with getting through the day, and that's okay too. There's no judgment here. So you could even make a bucket list. You know, we're all going to die. There's a film, isn't there, about bucket lists? I think it's got Morgan Freeman in it. It's quite good to watch, actually. If you are on Netflix, I don't know if it's called The Bucket List. No, it's a really good film. And so, you know, write a few things down. What is it I want to do? Because if you don't, it's about, you know, it's a bit like getting in your car, and you know where you're starting from, but you don't know where you're going. What would be the point in that? You know, you've always got a destination when you walk out your front door, whether you're walking or driving or on your bicycle. You know, you've got somewhere that you want to get to, even if it's around and back at where you started. I'm going in and I'm coming home. There's always a destination, and there's a route that you need to take in order to get there. So decide, where is it that I want to be? What does my life look like in 6 months' time, in a year's time? Do I always want to be staying where I am now, or do I want to have a different life to this? Something's important. What's important to you? And then self-awareness. So, you know, being self-obsessed is not the same as self-awareness. And I think one of the things that I want to be able to create for you is that the difference is quite subtle. Of course, we are all self-obsessed. Make no doubt about this, to a lesser or greater degree, because we have to survive, apart from anything else. But that self-obsession, when it switches to self-awareness, is one of the starts of that road to recovery, the start of the journey that you are on and that we're all on. So it's about not getting caught up in the detail of every day. You know, as you've said already, you know, as an addict, all I can think about is moment to moment. When I was addicted to this stuff, where was my next fix coming from? Where was my next drink coming from? What is it I need to do? Who do I need to find? So as you come out of that, let's actually not get caught up in the details and demands of the day. You know, seriously, life is to be here to be enjoyed. And of course, if you're living in the past, if you're still at that stage of living in the past, and I recognize that is probably the reality for most of you, then it's really difficult for you not to get caught up in the detail and the demands of the day. But if it's important to you to recover and to come out of this and to not feel like this for the rest of your life, because who would want that? Well, then you have to have some tools. You have to have some practical things that you can do in order to change the experience, to change the emotion, to change the temperament, to change the personal reality and the personality. One of those things is to make a gratitude list. So, you know, what are you grateful for? It may be grateful because you live where you are. You've been given the opportunity to live somewhere safe and to have money in your pocket, to have those people that are special to you, to just, you know, to be able to look out of the window, to be able to pick up the phone and talk to somebody, you know, to be able to take your socks off and stand on the grass, to be able to look into the sky and see the birds. There is always something for you to be grateful for every day. You know, those people that you admire, like Branson and Bezos, for example, those people spend 10% at least on self-improvement of their day. These guys don't get up and just get on with their day. These are the guys that have some sort of exercise routine. They will have some sort of mindfulness routine. Almost certainly they will do something. They will have mentors. They will have people like I'm helping you and like other people are helping me to focus them and to help them. All of them, all successful people don't become successful on their own. They will all have a team of people and they will all have routines and things that keep them to the high vibration so that they can be successful. I hope you understand that. This is the choice that they made, and therefore you have the same choice as well. And this is a very, very common technique in all the kind of world of successful people. If you read any books by successful people, this is so common. Most people will come up with this. So in the morning and as you go to sleep, or one or the other, oh, I'm grateful for just having a comfortable bed. I'm grateful that my sheets are clean. You know, I'm grateful that it's sunny today. I'm grateful that it's rainy today. 5 things. And if you only did this once a day, and you had 5 things every day, and you write it in a little book. I've got a little book. I haven't got it here actually. I've got a little book, 5 things that I'm grateful for. Then at the end of a year, you would have something like 1,600 things that you were grateful for. Whatever 5 times 365 is, you do the maths. You would have 1,600 things that you're grateful for. So you would, you know, the temptation is to focus on the bad things. But if you can switch it and focus on the good things, even if it is just for that 10 minutes as you wake up or before you go to sleep, or do it at lunchtime, whatever, then at least for that 10 minutes of the day, you're focusing on something positive. And finally, you know, one of the books I read in the 1990s was called What You Say When You Talk to Yourself. So it's thought that we have something like, I don't know, 90,000 thoughts in our brains every day. 80,000 of them will be the same thoughts that we had the day before. So this is our personal reality. So if we're always constantly thinking the same thoughts, then we're going to get the same results. And so we all have the ability to understand that by changing the way that we speak to ourselves in our head, because we speak mostly to ourselves in our head, more so than we speak to anybody outside. If we can change the words that we use in our heads, then actually that will change our emotion, it will change our temperament, it will change our personal reality. I hope you're getting this by now. So in other words, if you are the person that's going around saying, I can't lose weight, I'll never be able to do this, I'll never be successful, I expect it will get me in the end, you know, if somebody's been ill, so it's going to kill me off too, I'll never be able to do that. Nobody will want to hear what I think. I don't think people like me. I'm never going to have a new relationship. I'm never going to have a partner. I'm never going to move out of here. I'm never going to kick my habit. You know, those things, this is typical. This is what we do all of the time. This is this little monkey brain that sits here, says, what do you think? You know, and anyway, you're not really worthy. You know, your brother's better than you. You're not worthy. Your brother's done better than you. Your brother's taken over your space. You're not worthy. You're not worthy. That's all smoke and mirrors. That's not true. That's not true. It's because it's what you're saying in your head. And yes, it might be true in terms of the reality of what's going on in your life, but you have the ability to change the narrative. And once you change the narrative, you have the potential for changing the outcome. So although you might want to lose weight, instead of saying, I'll never lose weight, you know, the universe doesn't understand never, not, nobody, won't, don't, can't, doesn't understand that. It just hears you say, it hears you say the words, but it doesn't understand the positive or negative. So instead of I don't want to lose weight, or I can't lose weight, it's easy for me to lose weight and keep it off. Instead of I'll never be successful, I'm making the difference. And it may be that you're just working in a frigging Oxfam shop. You're still making a difference because you're giving your time 2 hours a week. I'll never be able to do that. I'm looking forward to learning new things. Looking forward to it. I don't know what they are yet, even, maybe. But actually, maybe one of those things is taking out your cookery book and learning how to follow a video and cook yourself a decent lunch. How about that? Nobody will want to hear what I think. I'm loved, I'm worthy, I'm everything I need to be and more. And I know that's really difficult at the moment because society, and this is where we started here, society has told you that you're a bad person because you have an addiction. You are not a bad person. You have some pain that you've been trying to deal with, whatever that might be. And I'm not here to discuss that with you or to go into that with you. But actually, you're still the same person that was born. You are loved, you're worthy, you're everything you need to be and more. Nobody will want to hear, I don't think that person or people like me. I'll always find the right people to spend time with, because they are out there. They're the ones that, you know, are successful, that you admire, that have a sense of humor, that are caring, that are funny, that are reliable. Because once you become caring and reliable and honest, and you can be, you know, you can laugh at yourself, those you will attract those people too. So I just wanted to put this up last for you, just as a reminder that we all have the ability to reframe this. Because we've all had a past. I've had a past that I've examined in the recent years, and understood where some of my feelings of lack of self-worth came from, and my feelings of women don't like me, or whatever it might be. But it's no wonder I felt like that, because I was bullied by girls at school. So my experience was, I was bullied by girls at school. Girls don't like me. So the emotion was, I was upset and sad. So the temperament was, well, I'm not really going to, bother with girls because they don't like me. And that became part of my personality for years and years. My personal reality was, well, I've only got a few very close female friends because most women don't like me. That was in my head because of an experience that I had when I was 8. And all the work that I've done up to now is to recognize that that's not true. That's not true. The experience happened, but the emotion happened. But actually, I've recognized now that that was a reflection more on them than it was on me. That they were the child, actually, that was being traumatized at home. And they were just reflecting their pain on me. And once I understood that, then I reframed it all. My emotions around it, that one of the perpetrators actually friended me on Facebook about 3 years ago. And I've accepted her as a friend, and that's fine, because I have no judgment here. So that has created a different way I feel about that experience, and how it changed my temperament, how it changed my personality and the personal reality that I had, that I thought that women don't like me. Not true. Actually, women love me, and most of the time now I spend with other women. And it's a very personal experience for me. And I'm sharing that because, you've been really honest with me, and you have shared your personal experiences with me. But that's not my personal reality anymore, because I decided that that wasn't serving me.